I mean, I think everybody would be having better sex, better relationships if we were having that kind of conversation before you did anything with somebody else. Being like, hey, you know, I think you're super cute. I really want to make out with you. I'm totally comfortable taking my pants off. Kind of self-conscious taking my shirt off. Let's try butt stuff, but nothing in my vagina. You know, if you were to...
That's like your dream,
Fuck. Oh my God. Jesus.
His face just got so red.
So many things. I just went through the most absurd roller coaster of emotions in like a 10-second span.
He's like, yes, more.
What's a healthy pulse rate for me right now? I don't even know.
This is amazing. Wow.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Menage-A-Pod, the hysterical comedy podcast about sex, dating, and relationships. I'm your co-host, TJ, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, and probably the only person in the world I know that loves tacos and margaritas as much as me.
Well, that's probably not true, actually.
I think
there are a lot of people who love tacos and margaritas.
They do, but I feel like we're carrying the torch for everyone out there that's kind of basic about their cultural food choices.
I mean, maybe. I was just told this weekend that like every girl on Bumble talks about wanting to go eat tacos with people.
Well, do you remember?
Do you think that's like a euphemism?
Well, in Vic's episode, when we eating tacos.
Eating tacos.
Oh,
yeah.
That's going to be a different episode, I think.
So I have a story for, do you want to hear it?
Yeah.
Okay, so.
Is it good first?
Yeah, of course. It's always a good story because it's my dating life.
Okay, it better be good because we got a good guest.
I know. Like, I don't want to oversell my story now, but it was kind of fucking weird. I was supposed to have this date this weekend with this guy I met online, and he was semi-normal. I mean, relatively normal up until this point. He was texting me the day of our date, and or the day before, because I sent you the conversation. And he basically was like, what are you going to be wearing on the date? And I said, I'm not entirely sure, because we were like meeting at a Starbucks. I was like, I'm not entirely sure yet. It's not until tomorrow. So I'll let you know. Because here I'm thinking like he's just trying to identify me in a crowded space. So I was like, I don't know. Like, I'll figure it out and I'll let you know. And he goes, a dress or a skirt would be preferable. And I was like, okay, that's cool, bro, but it's 30 degrees outside, so it's probably not going to happen.
My response was, it was 36 degrees and we need podcast content, so wear the dress.
Yeah, that's exactly what he said.
Oh, really?
Yes, This is the kind of advice I get from him. So I wrote back and I was like, yeah, probably not going to happen. It's like 30 degrees outside, but I'll let you know. And then he writes back, yoga pants are good too, wink face. And I was like, oh, just stop talking. So then I let some time go by, and the next thing he asks me, and I didn't tell you this part because I want your reaction.
I hope he's not listening to the podcast.
He's definitely not listening. He doesn't even know I have it. I don't like to put that out there so soon. Anyway, so the next thing he says to me is, are you going to masturbate before or after I meet you?
You don't want to go out with a loaded gun. I get that. I get that.
I mean, like, who says that? I've never even met him.
Wow.
And it felt very aggressive. It felt very like, listen, I'm not like a prude, but I just sort of think that's so disrespectful. There's a level of respect there that you clearly don't have for me. You've never even met me. We can talk about that maybe after our first date. But like, I don't even know what you like really look like, you know?
Maybe mid first date.
Maybe mid first date. Maybe while we're over coffee. Who the fuck knows, right? Anyway, it was very weird. And then I bailed on him, and then he wrote back, this isn't his real name, but he said, oh, Stevie's so sad that you can't make it. And I was like, well, I just made the right decision.
Wow.
Nope.
So what you're saying was he's a perfectly well-adjusted, totally normal.
He was like 42.
Wow.
Yeah, like you should know better.
Yeah, you should probably have your shit together by then.
It was very weird.
It sounds like it. But
yeah.
I feel like these kinds of stories are par for the course with you, Jenna.
I know, but why? Why do I always attract creepy people?
I think you're just a high achiever, and you know we need this sort of thing to happen to continue to have content for this podcast. So as long as you want to keep going on these bad dates, I'm just going to stay over here and keep to myself and watch your life go down in flames.
Fine. That's nice of you. Thank you. He's a good friend, right?
I feel a lot of love in this room.
Yeah,
there's
a ton of it.
There's more than I'm letting on. When the tape stops rolling, I'm nothing but sugar.
Really?
Yeah, mostly. All right, well, I don't have anything too interesting that happened to me. I traveled last week for work, so nothing really exciting went on in my personal life. So why don't we jump into the guest?
Let's do it.
All right, guys, this is awesome. I just have to say that. So excited. So our guest today is a professional dominatrix and the owner of Chicago Dungeon Rentals. She is also a sexuality educator with over 14 years of group and private instruction experience. She's taught workshops at universities, including Northwestern and the University of Chicago, and provided instruction on topics as varied as flirting, dominance for beginners, which kind of interested, let's say, and embodied sexuality for survivors of abuse. And we couldn't be more excited, as I said, to have her on the show today. So glad you agreed to come on. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure.
I'm Sophia Chase. I am a professional dominatrix, and I own 3 BDSM rental facilities in Chicago, Logan Square, Westtown, and in Albany Park.
Where is Albany Park? I'm so bad around the city and getting out of places I don't know.
Aside from Logan Square, a lot of times folks aren't quite sure where anything else is. And even our Westtown location.
They're not sure, period. That could have been the end of the sentence.
I love Westtown.
Yeah. Oh, I love Westtown too, but nobody knows exactly where that is.
Yeah.
Or if I say, oh, well, we're Noble Square. It's right next door.
Okay.
Where's that?
Right by 5 Star Bar.
Thank you. It is right there. You know the neighborhood.
I do.
For all the out-of-towners, we just say, we're West Loop. We are literally west of the Loop.
Yeah.
I'll take West Loop.
Yeah.
It works.
Yeah.
It works.
Fair.
It works. A little creative license, but it's good.
Exactly.
You know what's really funny for this episode? So I have the shame bell, as I like to call it.
Oh, goodness. Okay.
For TJ, because sometimes he'll say...
She's trying to train me. It's like operant conditioning.
It is, which I feel like goes really well with today's topic. And so my thought process was, since she is a dominatrix, maybe we should up the ante here. But then I was like, no, she's probably too expensive. I can't afford that. But that would have really
I
gotten
don't know.
you.
This is
It
a
would
nice
have,
apartment.
whips and shit.
You probably
I know.
could afford it.
You're right. Well, yeah, you're right. Go on. Sorry. I just thought that last night. I was like, that would have been really funny, but also probably expensive.
So do you want to really quickly tell the story of how we were lucky enough to stumble upon Sophia?
Yeah, it always leads back to Tabitha. All roads lead back to Tabitha, who's like my very good friend who works for WGN.
Okay.
She gets a shout out probably every episode because she's been helping book guests because she's a good human. And she saw your article in the Loganist.
Oh, great. Okay.
And so
She tagged us both.
She tagged us in it. Yeah. And I read it and I was like, I've heard about this. I have friends who have told me about it. And I was like, that's awesome. We should definitely get in touch. And so I was really excited that you said yes.
Well, I'm really excited you guys invited me.
Yeah, we've been wanting to do like a kink episode for a very, very long time. So I think you're the perfect person to talk about it.
Wait, so I'm the first kink episode?
Yes.
That's even more
No
exciting.
pressure.
I don't feel any, actually.
We've had mild allusions to kink in like 2 or 3 episodes, but nothing too
Got it.
crazy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just going to represent for your entire community. I hope that's
No
okay.
pressure.
No pressure again. Yeah. It's cool. I like being a kink ambassador. I feel like I don't necessarily come off with the standard, very intimidating vibe or...
I don't know what you mean. I'm terrified right now.
Yeah, right? My pastel sweater and, stuff. So no, I like being that person sometimes because I feel it bursts some of the misconceptions people have about the community. And I feel like being non-threatening enough to be able to ask questions candidly and not make it completely salacious or whatever can be helpful.
But the salacious part can be fun too.
Oh, it totally is.
For sure. I will say, since obviously people can't see you,
Yeah.
she does come off as like very unassuming and like girl next door, which is not at all what I saw on your Instagram.
No, probably not. With less clothes on.
We do our research.
Wait, I have to ask, there are a lot of like feet. Is that a fetish? Is that like a fetish for a lot of people? Or do you just really like your feet?
I mean, I do like my feet, but no, foot fetish is probably the number 1 most common fetish.
It is
out there.
Oh, see, I already answered that. That was my rapid question.
Yeah, I think if you were to look this up, I'm pretty sure that it's like one of the top 5 most Googled sexual terms.
It
is
is?
feet fetishes.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't really get that one. I get a lot of them, but feet, you kind of, I think, ew.
I had a roommate in my 20s, and anytime
Turns on the foot.
Well, that's true. That's true.
Well, it's funny. I had a roommate in my 20s, and anytime we would go out, I'd meet someone, and I'd go back to him. I'd be like, "Oh man, I just met this gorgeous woman. She's so smart. She seems really sweet. She's very pretty." And he'd be like, "But what about her feet?" Every single one.
Okay, so I'm so curious how you would get into something like this and how it started for you, and kind of give us a little bit more background. I mean, we've done our research, but I haven't told the audience about anything, so it might as well come from you.
Oh, sure. Why not?
Yeah.
So it is 2019 now. I took my first live in-person professional domination session in 2009. So this is my 10-year anniversary, Domiversary.
Domiversary.
Domiversary. I like that. Yeah.
I'm feeling very nostalgic this year.
So it's a celebration. Definitely something to be celebratory about.
Oh, I think so. I feel like at this point I probably should have a good elevator pitch about how this all came about, but it's always so incremental. So I graduated from DePaul with an undergrad in women's studies. So it was a lot of focus on gender, sexuality for me, because that's just something I've always been fascinated with. And straight out of college, I went and was working for rape victim advocates in Chicago. So I was a medical advocate, and I handled all of their intake. And there's a lot of focus on, violence and a lot of recovering from trauma.
Yeah.
Which was definitely an interest of mine. And then my other part-time job with that was working at Early to Bed, which is a little feminist sex toy store on the north side of Chicago. It's really education focused. It's all woman-owned and operated. It has a lot of products for the trans community and gender expression. It's just a super, super cool, welcoming space that's not at all creepy.
Yeah.
Which at the time, this is probably 2003, it had only been open a year or two. I was like the second employee ever hired there. It was very much right at the beginnings of things. And it was such a wonderful experience. So I did nothing but read and talk to people and absorb as much information as possible about, just human sexuality. Every day was coming in and problem solving for people. They come in and be like, hey, this is what my issue is. And having to figure out probably the most non-threatening way to communicate with somebody else you just met about their personal life and possibly a sexual issue that they were self-conscious about. It was a really cool experience. But at one point I decided probably can't be in retail my whole life. And even the handful of classes that I teach there wouldn't necessarily be a career. And so I thought about all the occupations I might want to do. And I wanted to potentially go back into therapy and work with survivors of trauma. So I Googled a few different occupations. All of them required a master's degree in clinical social work.
Okay.
And so I was like, I guess that's what I need to get in order to have any of these jobs. And so I Googled best clinical social work, and University of Chicago came up, and I was like, awesome. That's right where I live. I think I'm going to go there.
Talk about fate.
Right. So it was great. It was a super intense program. But while I was there really was no time to have a part-time job. We were just full-time studying. I still needed extra money. And so I started doing sex advice over the phone.
Oh.
So, and I believe the company's still out there, but you essentially got your own little web page, and they would connect the phone calls, and you could decide to talk about whatever you wanted. So a lot of people would give, would do horoscopes, and, you'd have these fake psychics and things on there, but you'd also have people giving you like accounting advice or how to fix your computer. And so I just made my own. I was like, well, I'm a sex educator. Ask me questions about dating and stuff. And it was great fun. So it was just like this extension of the job I had been doing Early to Bed. And a few weeks in, I got a notice, and it said, we're sorry, we had to remove you from this. Somebody said you're doing phone sex.
What?
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, come on.
And I was like, wow. Well, I wasn't. So that's kind of disappointing.
You're like, I'm better than that. You would know if I was doing phone sex.
I'd be getting all of these great reviews. And so I contacted the customer support. I'm like, hey, guys, I think there's been a misunderstanding. And they said, no, sorry. Once you have been removed from the less sleazy section, we cannot move you back. You're permanently tainted. They said, so we moved you over to our phone sex site. And I was like, your what site?
Oh.
And so they had another branch, which I think is their money earner, which is their phone sex website.
That's probably
That's
what
pretty
really
lucrative.
happened.
Yeah, compared to, fake horoscopes and all that stuff.
Although, hey, I'm here for the fake horoscopes.
I'm sure they were entertaining as hell. But no, so I did that then for 3 years while I was in graduate school. And it was fantastic. Did everything from answering questions about dating and stuff to BDSM type phone calls. And I found the more that I talked with people, the more I really enjoyed the kinky things. And it was more fascinating than things that I'd done before. And I turned out to be really good at the domination ones. And so this was probably a solid 2 years of dominating people over the phone without ever touching them.
Which sounds kind of hot.
Because that's
super hot.
the thing, right? It's like a power exchange at some point. So you don't even have to necessarily touch somebody.
That would be the case.
Yeah.
So if I could touch somebody, wow, that's just, icing on the cake. It's great. I can make it that much better. But yeah, I can dominate somebody without ever touching them. And I felt really confident about that. And somebody who I talked with for probably 3 years on there, and I did webcam stuff too, so a little more performative there. He said, I'm coming through Chicago. Would you be at all willing to meet me in person, dominate me in person? And I was like, yeah, I totally would. That'd be great. I feel comfortable with you. You respect my boundaries all of these years. We've known each other a long time. I know a lot about you. I've seen a lot of you on webcam, all that stuff. And a friend of mine who was a professional dominatrix in Chicago, I asked her, I said, is there anybody who has a space that I could see this client at? And she said, yep, I have a friend. Let me introduce you. And it's one of those things you can't go and Google this, or there's no listings to rent a dungeon. And I rented 1 hour at a dungeon, saw my client, and I was sold. This was what I wanted to do. So I had this kind of interesting practice of 3 years, and then transitioning really quickly into real-time sessions and, enjoying doing research and being very analytical and stuff. I just did that much more research, threw myself into it, and was kind of a self-taught person, which I wouldn't recommend for the average, the average person.
What I think is really interesting is, you said just having that interest in gender and relationships, and that's sort of just blossoming curiosity sort of pushed you towards this, and you did the time and spent the hours, and you experimented with various kind of things within that. And it's kind of crazy to see how that unfolded to getting you to this path. It's really interesting. Exactly.
So when people say, oh, well, how'd you become a dominatrix? I'm like, well, it started with phone sex. They're like, what? Whoa, how'd you start doing that? Well, I'm like, well, it started with being a dating, advice person. They're like, wait, what? How'd it start with that? And so it's just this domino effect.
Living your best life and being your true self.
But that's pretty much it, actually. Thanks, TJ.
My pleasure.
But it all sort of makes sense with your degrees, right? Like gender studies and what was it? Clinical social work. I mean, it makes sense to have that background, because then you can kind of think about the way people's minds work and all that good stuff. So I can imagine how that could be helpful. So in a way, right? Like it seems...
Yeah.
I can't believe I'm going to say that, but like a natural progression.
Yeah, although it logically points to it, it still boggles my mind as to the uninitiated.
Well, there's a lot of ways that people can approach being a professional dominant. So it's almost exclusively women, just because that's where the market is. There are a handful of men out there, but so it's mostly these dominant women, and some people come at it from a performance background. You'll see a lot of crossover with people who do burlesque or stripping and webcamming. And then you have people who come at it from like a heavily psychological place, which is a little bit more where I'm coming from. And I also, inside me is really just a therapist at heart. And so for me, I feel very compassionate about this. I'm not a heavy sadist.
Right.
I can go there if that's what somebody wants, but that isn't my driving force behind all of this. So I have my own kind of niche.
For me, it seems almost like you saying that, coming at it from like the psychological aspect. As someone who's not initiated in this lifestyle, if I were to be, I almost think like that experience would be more fulfilling, just because of if you tie the amount of pleasure you have to the amount of vulnerability that you're displaying to get to that, you can get to a vulnerability that no one else is going to get to.
Thank you. I'd like to think so, but I think that's pretty accurate, actually. And for somebody who isn't coming at it like your friend, your roommate, who is really into feet, probably going to see any woman with super attractive feet, whatever his perception of that would be, would be fulfilling. But if you're not quite sure where you're coming at things from, coming to somebody who can ask the right questions, kind of parse through things and try different things with you until they figure out what actually hits the right spot, that's going to be a good experience for that person.
Literally hits the right spot.
Yeah. Frequently.
So can you kind of tell our audience a little bit about what actually BDSM is and all that entails, and sort of maybe a little bit of how they could get into something like this? And
Sure. Well, BDSM is an acronym. It stands for Bondage and Discipline, Domination and Submission, and Sadism and Masochism. So it's kind of a big umbrella for a lot of things. You had mentioned before, Jenna, that it's about power exchange.
Yeah.
And that is really a fundamental of BDSM, is power exchange. One person is relinquishing power, the other person is taking that on, and being held responsible for the other person's safety, well-being, and pleasure. It can be really exhilarating. If you've ever kind of had people talked about the most potent aphrodisiac is power.
Yes, it is.
Damn straight it is.
And sex and money, right?
And sex and money.
3. Yeah.
So I have that all kind of mixed together in my job.
Yeah.
Well done, you.
Thank you.
You may have just become both of our idols.
I mean, she already was before she walked in this house, so it's fine.
It's fantastic. So, for me, anytime I see people, it's easy to think about a submissive person going through all of these experiences that somebody else is, they're enacting all of these things onto you. But as a dominant, I I come out the other end feeling really exhilarated too. I go through the same kind of mental roller coaster and have the same, brain chemical cocktail release from all of this intense experience. And so I come out the other end of this, almost on a bit of a high, kind of like a runner's high or anything else that people might talk about.
I have a feeling it's better than a runner's high.
I like to think it is, but I really don't like running at all. So.
Same.
The only way I would run,
those people are crazy.
the only way I'd get runner's high is if I was running to Chicago Dungeon Rentals.
Oh,
But it's funny that you mentioned that actually, because I that is definitely a thing, that like chemical cocktail that you talk about. And there are, I don't want to derail your story. So
no, that's okay.
I feel like that's something that we should also kind of talk about, because there is a safe way to do it. There is a dangerous way to do it. Mm-hmm. So people who are looking into getting into this, maybe kind of like give us an outline of what that would look like, what those conversations are like, things like that.
Well, you said the first thing, conversations, communication is tremendous. So engaging in any type of BDSM play with another person for the first time, the biggest thing to make it a successful interaction is communication. So talking with that person, also, being very honest with yourself about what you're interested in, why you want to try this. Is it pure curiosity? Does it actually turn you on? What is it? Being very honest with yourself and with the other person. Also being honest about your experience level. Anytime you end up engaging in BDSM, a healthy interaction would include what's called negotiation, where the two of you would sit down and talk about your expectations, your interests, and where your limits are. I recently did a talk at IIT, Illinois Institute of Technology, for their, I think it was their Title IX committee that was part of their disciplinary board.
Right.
Because I guess there had been enough conflicts that had occurred with students about relationships where somebody had crossed the boundary that included BDSM, that they felt they actually needed everybody on that disciplinary board to have a training on healthy BDSM interaction, because they didn't even know how to mediate these types of conflicts, because they didn't know what was the norm, what was healthy, what should people be doing, who should be accountable.
But like, kudos to them for...
That's what I said.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And kudos to the student population of IIT for being more open-minded. I mean, I think...
A little ahead of their time
I
for
say that
children.
Obviously joking, but realistically, I think people's mindsets in general, I mean, clearly it's not all the way around on it, but I think a lot of people are much more open to it than previously.
Absolutely. And the interesting thing that I found out once I was talking to the board members there, so I presented and we had a lot of back and forth conversation about all of this, is it occurred to me, just because I'm 38. It's been a while since I've been in college and, having some of my first sexual experiences. But just like we fumble around, the first time we're taking somebody's shirt off, kind of a thing, you fumble around the first time you do something kinky. And if you have no experience with this, if you haven't had anyone to guide you and say, hey, this is what you should be doing, there's a lot of potential for doing damage. Mm-hmm. And so it had me kind of take a step back to go, hey, what would it look like for people who are exploring BDSM for the first time, who have no clue what they're doing, but they think they might be interested in it?
Sure.
And so to break that down with them and be like, well, somebody might really feel this strong desire to control the other person. They want them to have a good time, but they don't actually know how to talk about boundaries. All of those things, I'm sure that you can imagine would come up. You're trying something, you're awkward for the first time.
And I imagine there's such a boundary in communication in relationships that are more, not, I hate to use the word normal,
vanilla.
but vanilla. There you go. There it is. Yeah. That are more vanilla. I just think that if I'm in a vanilla relationship, approaching someone and talking about boundaries and sexual things and being very open and frank is difficult anyway. So I imagine that when the topic is that just adds a layer of complexity and difficulty.
Yes, exactly. I mean, I think everybody would be having better sex, better relationships if we were having that kind of conversation before you did anything with somebody else. Being like, hey, I think you're super cute. I really want to make out with you. I'm totally comfortable taking my pants off. Kind of self-conscious taking my shirt off. Let's try butt stuff, but nothing in my vagina. If you were to...
That's like your dream, TJ.
Fuck. Oh my God. Jesus.
His face just got so red.
So many things. I just went through the most absurd roller coaster of emotions in like a 10-second span.
He's like, yes, more.
What's a healthy pulse rate for me right now? I don't even know.
This is amazing. Wow.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
But if you had that conversation and that was honestly how you felt about what you'd be totally cool with and what would be the ideal thing with that moment, how much better would that interaction be with the other person? They wouldn't have to read your mind.
Yep.
If I knew all of that, I wouldn't waste time trying to take your shirt off. You know, I know that, X, Y, or Z wouldn't be expected. And I know exactly the route to get where you want to go.
Yeah.
God, that saves everybody time. Nobody's going to feel, accidentally a slight level of, I was about to say vulnerability, but I meant like violation or anything because you crossed the line. Everything was up front. Everybody's expectations were known. And you could also say at that moment, oh shit, I only want to do stuff with your vagina. I'm not really interested in your butt. Hey, I'll see you later. And then you could have parted ways. Yeah, not Joe. Into the butt stuff? Is that it?
I'm not saying. I've spoken to my press people and they've told me that I should not make a statement on this time.
Okay. Pleading the fifth. Okay, that's fair.
So, but that kind of conversation needs to happen if you're going to be engaging in BDSM play or anything kinky, because you have that many more options on the table.
Right.
Instead of just having, it's kind of instead of having like a fork, a spoon, and a knife in front of you on the kitchen table, you have the entire, cutlery set out there. You really want to know what's okay to use and what's not.
I was thinking, and this is maybe just from my personal experience of this doesn't kind of mesh with what other people out there are feeling. I just know in just my relationships as a vanilla person, which sounds weird to say because as far as vanilla goes, I couldn't be any less vanilla, but a vanilla person. I feel like
in the spectrum of things.
Yeah. Well, throw me. I'm right down the middle. I'm moderate. No, so I feel like my experience, me as a man, and stories I've told with friends of mine who are male, that we have less problem being specific about what we want, what our boundaries are, whatever. Whereas my experience has been that women have been less willing or less open to do that, even if it's something. What are your boundaries? What do you like? Oh, but what if you've dated all the women and that was the experience?
True. You have dated all the women. That is true. That's true. Yeah,
no, but I'm just saying, like, there are plenty of people who just as an off. There's so many women who, he was giving me oral and he couldn't get me off. Where I think many men would be like, literally, tell me what you like. Tell me the thing you like, and I will do that. I'm like a student. Teach me. And I feel like that sort of thing, is that something that perpetuates itself in the same sort of manner in this world where it's more towards the man is more open towards it? Or is it something because it's a more open-minded thing in general, as you see it, I think, equally on both sides?
I don't see it in the BDSM community as much of a gender breakdown of that kind of difference in level of communication. You might, if I were to sit down and think about it, I might be like, hey, I see that a little bit more with dominance or a little bit more with submissives. But I think it's anybody who has some self-consciousness, there's some shame associated with it, and that's usually internalized stuff. So that'll happen. People will not be honest about what they really want. For me, if I see clients, every now and then I can see that when I'm asking them questions, doing that negotiation, which is kind of like an informational interview where the dominant's going to ask all these questions of the submissive gives all these answers, and then the dominant has this collection of information.
It's like a playbook.
It's a playbook that you can choose from once you are playing. It doesn't mean the submissive just dictated everything the dominant should do. No, they just gave you a lot of information to choose from so that when you're on this beautiful choose your own adventure, activity that you're doing together, you can draw back from all of that. If that submissive is holding out on you and wasn't telling you really that one thing they really wanted, but they're kind of ashamed of it because if you gave them like a raised eyebrow look like, really, that's what you want? And they would just feel crushed inside.
I'm sure.
You could picture that kind of, that shamey feeling. They're not going to have a good time. For me, I've been doing this long enough that frequently I can see when there's just like something just behind what that person is saying to try and probe a little bit more.
Right.
But sometimes I can't even pick that out, and there's going to be something unfulfilling for them, but that's because.
And at that point, it seems like what's the point for them, right? Why, if you're not going to feel open enough to really truly ask for the things you want, I feel like that's a fairly far step to take to stop short of asking for the thing you want.
I would agree with that. Also, depends a bit on how much disposable income you have.
Right, that's true.
If just getting yourself in the door to have that experience for the first time might help raise your confidence or make you go, well, shit, what do I have to lose?
Right.
The second time might be that much better because they really do spill all that out there. So it could be. It's interesting. And if people did really approach that kind of just radical honesty, complete communication before any type of sexual encounter and realize that it doesn't spoil things, that's what I feel like I hear a lot, especially within vanilla communities. It's like, oh, well, if we talk about it, it spoils it. Or, he's going to think that, I don't know if people still say, he's going to think I'm slutty or whatever, if that really is
I'm sure they do.
I feel like I'm so out of the loop with certain things.
Yeah, there are Pollyannas out there who still say ridiculous shit like that.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't dated straight vanilla women, so I really don't know what they might say. So I'm trying to picture some of those things, the stereotypical.
Right.
But they say that because there is such a stigma. And then I kind of want to get back I want to get back to the other parts of what you were saying, because I know there's more to it than just setting boundaries. Yeah. But before that, I think to kind of touch on your point, there's such a stigma around it, especially I think for women, right? Like I've been on dates with people and I'm very open about this kind of thing with people because, well, hello, we have a podcast. It's about sex and dating, right? So we talk about it on air. I might as well be able to talk about it on a date. I've had conversations, like very open conversations about sex and things like that on dates. And I always feel this need to preface with me saying like, I don't want you to think I'm like slutty or anything, but I do have this podcast. We talk about it a lot. So we're like very open sexually and sex positive and all that stuff. So for me, it's not a big deal to talk about, but like sometimes men, I feel like will look at me and judge me in this way. And I think, why? Like, don't you want me to be like that? Like, don't you want me to be open to certain things? Like instead of some like, but no, they don't. No is the answer to that. Well, I think the answer to that is strong men don't care. But then I think that there's like these men that are a little bit more, they're stuck back like in their like very like 1950s.
Yeah. I mean, or maybe they're early on their journey into getting that strong
at 40,
sense of self.
Are they?
Some people are really slow, matures.
Seriously, men. God damn it.
We're the worst.
You're the worst.
No, I mean, sometimes.
Yeah.
We're in consensus then.
Yeah.
I mean, I can be critical of men all day long, but I also feel like I've done a lot of dating too. I've been in long-term monogamous relationships. I've been in, open relationships. And I've also been more recently, just trying the dating thing again and again and again. It is fascinating to see the different types of men who are out there. And a lot of times when I'll talk to people who find out that I'm a dominatrix, not people I'm going on dates with, but people who find out that I'm dating and this is my job, they go, oh my God, you must have so many creeps, people who make assumptions about you, X, Y, or Z. And I don't know if it's just the approach that I'm taking to it, but I have had such good luck. I have met amazing people. I never go out on a date with somebody without them knowing what I do for a living, because if that is a deal breaker for them, I don't want to waste their time.
Right.
Yeah, and I don't want to waste my time either.
Yeah.
And frequently, if you tell somebody what you do for a living and it's in the sex work world, you can get a pretty good feeling pretty quickly how mature they are.
Totally.
Just by their response to that.
Yep.
So I love the dating apps because it gets it out of the way so fucking quickly.
Yeah.
It's fabulous.
One more vote for the dating apps.
Yeah.
Good to hear it.
Yeah.
So I want to get back a little bit to what we were talking about before. You mentioned boundaries, but I know that there are other parts of this, like consent.
Starting out.
Yeah. So like, can you talk a little bit more about that and what that looks like? Because it can be, right, for all intents and purposes, if you're not with the right partner, it could be dangerous for the man and for the woman, right? So
Definitely. I would say my very first BDSM experience when I was dating, and this was in my early 20s, I'm vaguely aware of kink and somewhat interested in it. And I went on a date with somebody and he was obviously very interested in BDSM, but he didn't do the right things that you might want to do the first time you interact with somebody, which is, we talked about setting boundaries, negotiation, saying where your limits and everything are, but also establishing with that person that, hey, if you're the dominant, that, hey, if the submissive says stop, or if you decide to use a common safe word to stop everything is called red. If they were to call red, you would respect that and you would stop everything. And establishing that level of consent and then validating that you will adhere to respecting that person's boundaries and limits is tremendous. And it's a really small thing, doesn't take a lot of time, But I feel like that is really, really big. And it allows the person who is relinquishing control, giving themselves up to you as a submissive, to feel comfortable doing that and confident in doing that. And then they can actually enjoy themselves. This person didn't have all of those conversations. And consequently, I think we ended up doing something where he used a cane on me, which is a pretty severe implement for
A
not
beginner.
exactly spanking, but yeah. You're caning somebody's ass. It's very, very painful. And, I didn't feel horribly violated by anything, but we certainly did not go about that the right way. And I felt super confused by the end of that interaction. I'm like, I kind of had a good time, but I kind of felt really weird. And all those things, that's what you don't want to do the very first time.
Right.
Because then it'll ruin it for you moving forward and you may not want to try it again. I also think there's something, I know I just kind of I give shit to men all the time on this podcast. Sorry, men. But I think
I'm here taking it on the chin for all you guys.
Aw, what a trooper.
I think I have to give credit where credit's due, right? I mean, I'm looking at this because I'm a woman, right? I don't know. I guess you're a dominatrix, so maybe not. But I guess the point is like if someone says red, like you have to, and you're like in the moment and you're in it, to stop has to be really hard. So I got to give credit where credit's due, right? Like if I was like in the middle of like really enjoying myself and someone said stop, I'd be like, fuck. It's got to be really hard.
Frustrating or disappointing, but it depends what your motivation is. If your motivation is purely to get yourself off, it's going to be hard because you are thinking about your pleasure right there. I'm getting just what I want.
There are other motivations?
Yes.
Interesting.
Weird.
But if you're somebody who gets off on the power of all of this, gets off on seeing the other person either having pleasure or just having an experience, for me, I really get a ton of energy and pleasure from seeing people have a journey and experience and being the person facilitating that. If they were to say red, I'd want to stop because I want to see that journey and that experience continue. And if I don't, stop everything when they say red, that ruined it all for me too. So it kind of depends on who you're playing with. But if somebody was purely selfish and focused only on their pleasure, it would be super hard to say stop. But
that's not the right person.
That's not the right person to play with.
Yeah.
And I do want to say also, sometimes as submissives who are dating, especially for submissive men, because there's a lot more submissive men out there, just statistically, than there are dominant women. I see people sometimes settle to date somebody just because they found a dominant woman. They're like, okay, finally, I found somebody who wants to date me, who is okay with kink. And they might put up with somebody being kind of abusive or not really respecting them very much just to get that one part of themselves fulfilled.
That's kind of sad.
It's super sad, but people do that with all kinds of relationships. But what I do want to say is if people are listening and thinking, this is something I'd really like, I'd like to have that as part of my relationship, do not settle. There are enough kinky people out there. Or for me, I personally like dating vanilla people and then exploring kink with them because honestly, I feel like I find new things more frequently that way because I'm seeing it from a fresh set of eyes.
Yeah.
And I also, like I said, I kind of get off on helping people have new experiences. So
right. I was going to say that's
does it
probably
for me
got to be a little bit
too.
part of it, right? You're like their Sherpa.
Yes, but then, just letting them organically have an experience, they'll bring up things and I'm like, well, I kind of never thought about doing it exactly like that. Or I personally really love talking during play. And so people saying things in new and different ways is really exhilarating for me. So new people, kinky people, vanilla people, and then just inching them into kink. So amazing to see what comes out.
I bet. I mean, so just like on the topic of dirty talk, like at a certain point, do you run out of things to say? Do you be honest? Do you like reuse certain things because they're
absolutely.
gonna work? Yeah,
and I would say that not in a negative way.
Yeah,
if you find kind of hot button words for certain people, it doesn't matter if you say it again and again and again. It's still the same fucking hot button word.
Yeah,
anybody who enjoys dirty talk or likes being talked to can probably understand what
Why
this
did
is.
you look at me like that?
Tell me I'm a piece of shit and step on my cubes. I don't care.
I don't know. Either of you enjoy dirty talk?
Yes.
I do. Yeah.
Okay. So you can probably think of what the hottest thing you could hear from one particular person might be. And if they said that to you right now, you would just be like ready to go.
I brought you 3 tacos.
There you
Done.
go.
My clothes are off.
Yep. The only reason it's dirty is because my sheets are white. So that's totally dirty talk.
Well, there you go. But that did it for you, well, would you want that person to suddenly start talking about all these different cuisines? You're like, no, tacos do it every time.
Every
Tacos
single
are
time.
fucking amazing.
That's so true.
I want to
You're
eat that same
speaking
amazing
directly
meal.
to my soul right now.
Oh, I'm so happy. So yes, I reuse things constantly, but for the absolute best effect.
Yeah.
It's kind of like economical in a way.
It really is.
And especially in something, I mean, I don't know the specifics, but I'm sure not necessarily in your personal life, but in your professional life, this isn't like a cheap experience, I'm sure. And if you know something's going to work and you're kind of just, you're using it because it works and they like it and you know you're getting it done, why resort to something that you're not sure?
Well, and I'm also going to use it in an economical way too. So I'm not going to just keep saying,
over and over,
you're a dirty boy. If that was the words, those were the words that really did it for the person. I'm going to tease it out. I'm going to say a few other things that sound like I might be saying that and then not, and then work it up. Oh God, when you do that, you are such a dirty.
Stop it. Are you hard right now? You are, aren't you? Even I got wet there because she was like, whoa. That was like her voice
The
dropped.
vagina on the wall just got stimulated.
I do really like that artwork.
Thank you. Her voice dropped. Her like, geez, you're good. You're already good at your job. I'm sold.
That is, if you want tip for any beginner dominance out there, low and slow. You lower your voice just a little bit. Man or woman, does not matter. It gives you instant authority and it's sexier.
Yeah.
And you slow things down. You're not going to trip over your own words. And it makes the other person instantly submissive because they are forced to wait to hear what you have to say. They are hanging on your words.
It's made me instantly submissive because I have 20% less blood in my brain right now.
Took it up from the table.
Yeah. So, but I'll say
that's a good tip. That's a good tip, single ladies out there.
Slow and low.
Or,
Just like my pork shoulder. Wait,
what?
Slow and low. You cook it in the cooker. Slow and low. Pork.
You're going to have to edit that one out.
Probably.
Yeah.
They can't all be home runs. As
I know,
said.
you're right.
I take a lot of shots, and they're not always great.
That's okay. Sometimes they're home runs, though, and those are beautiful.
All you had to do was lower your voice and say it slower, and it might have.
Just like my pork shoulder.
There you go.
Actually,
not bad.
Pork shoulder has kind of an inherent sexiness to it for some reason, anyway.
Does it?
I think the word pork.
You've got it.
Yeah. See. God damn it, she's good. I know. You good over there, bro? You good?
I'm good.
Cool.
I'm going to have some water, too. You guys are...
I know. It just got real hot in here. Yeah. So you mentioned being on the dating apps and out there dating. Are you in a relationship now?
I am.
How does that work? I guess that's the question. So I'm going to preface this with, I was out with a bunch of friends this weekend and all of them are very excited about this episode. I have a lot of them were married. And so they're like trying to look for ways to like spice up their relationship and things like that, or just in long-term relationships, generally speaking. Sure. So this was a question at the end of this episode. I have rapid questions that are specifically from the focus group of 5 that I was out with. It's
awesome.
Fine. Yeah.
I don't know if 5 is a statistically significant sample, but we'll see.
It's fine. One of the things that came up actually, which I thought was a really good question, was being in a relationship, right? And having a job as a dominatrix. How does that, is that ever an issue in a relationship? Is it, I don't know, like how you'd find a balance there maybe, or keep the two so separate?
Yeah. Well, I've had enough years of experience. I feel pretty comfortable in what works for me. And what I've found is, personally, I can't date anyone who has an issue inherent with my job. So I'm honest and upfront about what it is. Dating a sex worker in general is challenging. So anybody who has a job that is about turning people on, so whether it's somebody who doesn't touch anyone, like phone sex or webcamming, or maybe even some stripping, or if you are a massage worker, an escort, or a dominatrix. So while I still don't have sex with my clients, I see a lot of people naked. I'm in really sexy clothes and I'm dressing up for other people. There could be some jealousy factors in there. So if I date somebody and they're jealous or insecure, it's instantly not going to work. Right. So those are the things that I'm always on the lookout for. If I see tinges of jealousy or immaturity, I just know it's not going to work. For me, I haven't had a lot of issues actually.
Really?
Is it because you think you're very upfront about it?
I'm super upfront. I am a big believer in being very blunt and radically honest and kindly honest about things. I feel like it avoids so much miscommunication and hurt feelings and things like that. So I'm a very literal person. And fortunately, I tend to date mostly men. Men tend to be pretty literal too, and so our communication styles tend to match really, really well. There's not a lot of me that you need to read into. And so I feel like that actually tends to work in my favor. So I'm honest about what my job is. Probably the best question that I ask anyone is, what are you comfortable hearing about? Does it make you uncomfortable to hear about my work? In which case, I will keep it very abbreviated. I don't need to tell you about exactly how my day went. I'll tell you I had a good day, I had a bad day, worked a lot, worked a little.
Was on my feet all day. Oh.
Exactly. So, just finding what that person's comfort level is. And certain people have a comfort with, out of sight, out of mind. I don't see it, so it doesn't bother me. If you talk to people, you said you had somebody on here who was in open relationships.
Right.
How much are you going to discuss with your primary partner what you and, your tertiary partners are doing? You discuss that and you figure it out, and you don't give unnecessary details that might make the person feel insecure or jealous or, because you essentially as a dominatrix and any sex worker really, you are giving time and attention. And if your significant other is feeling deprived at all of time or attention, that hurts. It's not even the sex part. It's really that you are giving something of yourself.
And even someone who maybe wasn't necessarily predisposed to the jealousy, when they're feeling that lacking, it just is going to make them much more inclined to see it as a threat to what they have with you, I'm sure.
Yes, exactly. So just keeping all of that in mind, and things tend to work out pretty well for me.
Man, can you just rub off on me? Because it sounds like you're having so much luck dating, and I'm having such a hard time, and I don't even...
She's one of the most charming people I've ever sat down with. You, jury's still out.
Oh, I like that you have that bell.
Thank you. I like it too. Yeah.
I'm all about training men too.
Thank you. Yeah.
If there's ever been a man in need of training, he's sitting right here.
Yeah. So I did see, why don't you tell everyone a little bit about the classes that you teach there? Because I saw on your website, there are a bunch of really fun classes that people can do. Yes. And I think it would be good for people who maybe, some go from less extreme, I'll say, to a little bit more extreme or more heavy kink. So I feel like it could be for those people that do want to spice up their relationships or whatever. There's probably options that you have that they can go to, and kind of what that looks like.
Definitely. Yeah. So besides renting my dungeons either by the hour or overnight.
Greatest. I've never thought I'd ever hear that sentence in my life.
So I actually saw that they were rented by the hour. Is an hour
sufficient?
Enough?
Nope.
No, I wouldn't think so. So
that's why you usually do a few hours. Yeah. But if, let's say, you and your significant other want to spice things up, you aren't quite sure if you're up for this, an hour can be enough time to kind of hang out in there, look at all the stuff.
Yeah, true.
Spank each other a little bit. Or you know what? Every now and then, I swear, because we come in, we clean everything afterwards.
That was my question.
Oh, we are very, very, very big on cleaning.
Yeah, I have a problem.
That seems weird. Is that a thing? I don't even know.
Honestly, we're going to talk about that because it was one of the questions that came up. Because I was I don't even sit on hotel room beds.
Nor should you, really.
Right? So I'm like, what does that look like?
Every hotel I go into, I shit you not, I sit bare-assed on the couch and just kind of scoot my butt around just to kind of mark my territory.
Yeah. See, and we assume that you were there before us, so we don't sit on the
So for anybody who's stayed at a Marriott in the last 2 years who developed pink eye, I'm sorry.
I can tell sometimes, usually what people have used based on what they leave out or what's out of place.
Oh, right.
So I have one full-time employee. Between the two of us, we clean the dungeons. When it's only professional dominatrixes who have rented the rooms, they're responsible for cleaning themselves, and we have an entire cleaning protocol that they have to adhere to. And if they're slacking on that, they can't rent there anymore. But for the couples, because I can't expect them all to clean to a certain standard.
Sure.
Our only request for them is we're going to leave out a cleaning spray and paper towels, wipe down the surfaces you use. Like if you were at the gym, you wipe down the machine after you use it. And
some people do.
Some people do. Some people don't. And
some people don't.
We
I hate those
assume
people.
that people don't, even if they do. They say they do. And then anything that you take off the walls, because a lot of things are hung up, you just leave out on the bondage table, because there's a really big bondage table surface.
As there would be, of course.
As there would be. Leave things out that you use. So that's the only thing people have to do. So we come in afterwards. I see which toys are used most frequently. And sometimes one thing is left out, and you can tell they didn't touch a thing. And so frequently I think people come in, they're like, cool environment. We're going to fuck on the bondage table. They don't necessarily do anything kinky, but it is in a fun, kinky new place.
What
maybe
is
it's
the-
just dipping their toe in, right?
Exactly. And that 1 hour, that's probably fine. That's plenty.
Yeah.
And then next time they can talk about it afterwards and be like, whoa, this part was really interesting. Maybe we want to try that next time. Give some ideas, give some context. And they know also, what to pack, what they don't need to pack. Yeah, that kind of stuff. So I used to teach all of the classes there. But my responsibilities are pretty broad running the dungeon. So I have now one educator on staff. Her name's Sarah Sloan. She is fantastic. And she's nationally known. She goes to lots of different sexuality conferences, teaches classes on a variety of topics, and a lot of them BDSM focused. But she teaches vanilla things too, so she can teaches classes about anal play. It's still kind of vanilla.
I love that she looks at you when she said that.
I might be looking her up right now.
So Sarah Sloan. And I broke down the classes a little bit in terms of, like you said, there's some things that are a little bit more mild and some things that are really, really kinky. So of her class selections, we have making an impact with impact play, so things like spanking and flogging and canes, bondage basics, sensory deprivation, so if you can imagine playing with like blindfolds and headphones on and just lots of bodily sensations, communicating your desires, so how to actually communicate what you want, because God knows nobody teaches us how to do that. And it sounds like a really, maybe not the most interesting class, but God, that will help you with everything else.
Yeah.
So,
it's basically what you said earlier. I think a lot of people should take that class.
Agreed.
And also if maybe you felt like you've been trying to say something to your partner, trying to get them to hear you, and maybe it hasn't happened. I know from the times that I've taught courses like this, I feel like I have been just like this little tiny bridge between two people where you can tell they've been having the same conversation for many, many years even, and just not hearing each other in a certain way. And I'm able to bridge just something slightly different, and they're able to hear each other and find that compromise.
That's got to be a great feeling.
It is an amazing feeling. That's one of the things I do miss a little bit about not teaching as much. But yeah, communicating your desires. Fantastic. Then she does stuff like anal play 101, community 101. So people who have never been to like a BDSM play party, or they want to go to swingers events, talking to them about what the etiquette and social norms are there, what are expected. People sometimes want to go, well, what do I even wear to a BDSM party?
Yeah, what do you wear to a BDSM party?
If in doubt, wear black.
For sure. It's like my entire wardrobe.
Then you're good to go.
It's very
As an
slimming.
East Coaster. Yeah.
But she can answer questions about things like that. And if you've never been to one of those, that can be really intimidating.
Yeah.
So
I would imagine.
Community 101, fantastic class. Rough body play. So if you like rough sex or things that are kind of wrestly, grapply stuff, she's great on that. Strap-on sex for everybody.
Pegging.
Peggy.
Ooh, look at you with the terms.
Hey, I watched that Broad City episode. I know what's up.
We trace all that back to Dan Savage, who coined the term.
Is that who coined it?
Really?
Oh, yeah.
We were just talking about him before you came here.
Yeah, he coined the term pegging. And I love Broad City because they have their own sex toy line.
They do.
They do?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
my
didn't
God,
know
look
that.
it up. It's
so funny.
fantastic.
It all from the episode. Yeah, I actually just watched the episode last night where Abby's mom comes into town and they take her sex toy shopping.
I feel like I didn't see that episode.
It's
Don't tell me
season 4.
anymore.
You
Okay, I haven't seen it
Check
yet.
it out.
But I love it. All of the toys in their line are inside jokes from the show.
And when you say inside jokes, never mind.
Some are external. Yeah. Let's see. And then we have some of the heavier kink classes. So basic medical play, cock and ball torture and genital torture.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Right. Chastity play. So keeping your partner in chastity, and what are the benefits of that? How is it erotic?
What does that mean exactly? I mean, I know what the word chastity means, but like give me an example of what that looks like. Why?
A synonym for that would be maybe orgasm control.
Oh.
And it can be really hot if your partner is turning you
weren't
on
thinking
to
that.
Yes, I was. I was going to say Sting and the tantric sex thing, how they kind of
yes.
hold off and
Fair.
delay gratification.
Okay.
Yes, which I want to say, Sting came out a while ago and said, I did not help anyone have an 8-hour orgasm. That whole thing is a myth.
Fake news.
I feel really
Womp womp.
terrible having perpetuated that really unrealistic expectation.
No, I've had an 8-hour orgasm.
Seriously.
Could you imagine?
Awesome.
Yeah, it was amazing.
That sounds exhausting.
What's the recovery time
Exhausting.
like for that?
The refractory time
Days.
for an 8-hour orgasm was oddly like 14 seconds. I was back inside. Just kidding. I slept for 4 days.
Yes, that's what would have happened to me if that had happened. God. Let's see. Dominance 101, finding yourself. So finding that dominant part of yourself. Because goodness knows it's pretty easy to go into a submissive place. There's not a lot of skill involved. Might be a bit of a mindset change. But being a dominant, there's a mindset change, and then there's a whole skill set and confidence factor.
Yeah.
So dominants need a little bit more coaching. There's a heavier learning curve there.
I feel like some of these classes, and correct me if this is the stupidest thing you've ever heard, but I feel like some of these classes, say you're someone who works in like the corporate world and maybe you're a bit repressed, and that side of you is
I'm sure you get a lot of those.
Yeah. And
you
I'm sure you go to a class like this, and not only does that unlock that side of you in that way, but I feel like maybe that could trigger a certain level of self-confidence, or it could help you professionally.
Yes.
Totally.
So what I'm saying is
wouldn't
everybody out
disagree
there working in your cube, come on down.
Yeah, forget Second City.
Well, I'd say it's valuable.
Right? Maybe
You should get a flyer that
forget
says
Second
that.
City, come to my classes.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I don't want to take on Second City at all. They're pretty powerful.
Yeah, right.
But
Big
but
Second
yeah,
City.
I would say it's trying something that is scary to you or outside your comfort zone. In this class, you're not actually going to dominate anyone. You're not actually going to be tortured or any of those things. You're learning about something
So
new.
no cock and ball torture.
That does not
you ask
actually
nicely.
occur in session.
Okay.
But yeah, you're going to be trying something new. You're vulnerable. You have that exhilaration that you made it through the other end. You know, those things are really valuable experiences. And I feel like that actually is something that spices up a relationship more than learning a new sexual technique.
Right.
If you're going with your partner, you've never sat down and talked to a third party about your sex life before, that alone, wow.
I'm sure it's eye-opening.
Yeah, yeah. And then you leave and nobody else on the street knew that you just did that.
Yeah.
That's
hot.
that's a
I think
super hot thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that is probably a big aphrodisiac, I would have to think. Like that whole, no one has to know, right? Like looking at you right now, right? I would never know. So you were in with your boyfriend and I don't know, you guys have like a sexy little secret. That's kind of hot. I can see
Sexy
how that
secrets
would work.
are super hot. I mean, it's
Can
like
you say that in the
like
low
your-
and slow voice? Sexy secrets are super hot.
you just did it for me. I don't need to do it now.
Heavenly bodies.
That is exactly what that sounded like.
You're an
Nice. Oh my God.
But yeah, I can see. I mean, and that might just be enough, right? Like that just might be enough to get you
And
going.
it can be. So you don't need to
Yeah.
have your expectations super high or shoot for something super challenging. Try something that seems a little bit more mild,
Yeah.
you know? And there are a handful of classes that I only teach that Sarah doesn't currently teach. So I also teach plastic wrap suspension. So if you've ever seen somebody suspended in rope, you know, midair in these really cool bondage positions, I do that with plastic wrap.
There's a name for that. What's the name for that?
Shibari for the rope, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
I don't, research.
at you.
I know.
I know.
Look at me go.
I'm dropping all the terms.
I know.
And electrical play. So if you want to play with electrical current in an erotic way,
That might hurt.
you don't want to do it without any experience.
No.
you
Oh
definitely
my
want to
God.
take a class.
I once
Yeah.
put a
Could you
taser to my
imagine?
ear and my temple.
Oh my goodness.
Why would you do that?
Why?
You're an idiot.
22 and a lot of booze. The outcome, it was not sexual. We'll
No.
just say that.
Well, you just highlighted the entire thesis of that class, which is it is very easy to cause pain with electricity.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is very hard to cause controlled erotic sensations. And so if you want to be able to do something like that, that is subtle, exciting, you know, rises and falls, you want to take a class because you can very easily just crank up the intensity on something.
That,
And for some people, electricity, hard limits.
that might be a hard no for me. I think. Yeah. Can't. I mean, I could get down
Put me
with a
on the
lot of
jumper
stuff, but
cables
like
right now.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Oh, actually, and this just randomly, because you talked about experiencing the electricity there. If you are going to be trying BDSM for the first time and you're the dominant, I highly encourage you to experiment with being on the submissive side too. I don't do
interesting.
anything in session to anyone else that I have not experienced on the receiving end of things. So any of that extreme stuff that I might do to somebody else, I've tried it.
Yeah.
It might have been fun for me. I might want to do it again. Frequently, not for me at all. Would not want to do that again. But I know exactly what that feels like, so I can responsibly dish it out, and it makes me a better dominant then.
It's good to be familiar
good
with the
point.
tools in your toolkit, right?
Yeah,
And I mean,
and it's humbling too. I mean, I know how that feels. I could just as easily be taken down by X, Y, or Z, as opposed to being this infallible dominant too.
And also, like,
and that's
slightly
how we
impressive.
see you right now.
Yeah.
Aw, thanks. What were you going to say?
I was going to say also slightly impressive, right? Like if you, if something is painful for you and then you do it on somebody else and you're like, wow, well done you. That's how I would kind of see it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It makes you better.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we have some rapid fire questions for my sample audience of 5.
One question before you do this, and I looked earlier to make sure I wasn't jumping ahead. You said that when you go into the rooms, frequently you know by what's pulled off the wall what's the most popular things. What is the most popular thing?
That was the first. Did you not
No,
read?
it says, what's your favorite sex toy? I'm asking her what's the most used at the thing. Did I not read?
No, most frequently used. I'm going to think real quick.
You could lie to me. I won't know.
No, I'd say there's probably like 3 things.
Okay.
So some type of flogger off the wall, so a multi-tailed whip.
Flogging Molly, got it.
Yep. Restraints, so usually wrist restraints of some kind.
Okay.
And nipple clamps.
Ooh.
I'd say those are the top
The
3.
holy trinity right there, baby.
And I think those are pretty decent sampling.
Yeah. And I think those are some things even for a vanilla beginner like myself that'd be easy getting into that.
Nipple clamps?
Dude, absolutely. Hook it up to that taser that I put on my forehead.
It's like jumping a car. That's what that just
Exactly.
reminded me of.
Oh, goodness.
Oof. Okay, so rapid fire questions.
Yes.
What's your favorite sex toy?
Okay. If I
Well,
the question I would-
personally, and
Okay.
then to use on other people.
All right. Well, so 2 answers. One, if I want to be that person, my brain and my hands, those are the best sex toys out there.
100%.
I
Your
know.
brain. That's why I think dirty talk is so hot, because you can get there mentally before you get there physically, I would think.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and also it takes a lot of the heavy lifting out of the way.
Yeah.
You know, you get all that foreplay happening, and then you can, conserve your energy for the rest of things. But a very literal toy that I like, I love a Hitachi magic wand. They're
That is
fantastic.
that's an icon of the sex toy game
It
right
is,
there.
for sure.
Yep, it is a dungeon staple. We have one in every room.
Interesting. And not surprising.
Yep.
Has anyone ever freaked out during a session?
Yes, with me. So I had one person who hyperventilated. He was a young guy, probably college age, and I had him tied down, and he got himself so nervous and wound up that he hyperventilated. I had to sit him up. We had to calm down.
Oh.
Yeah.
Could he get back into it, though, afterwards, or was he sort of freaked out
In
from
this
there?
particular situation, he was not able to.
Yeah.
And so I let him know I was not upset with him or anything.
Yeah.
We'll wind it down and okay, you can go.
I can totally relate to that because the other day when I was in bed, my dog was laying on the sheet and I felt like really pinned down. I was like, and I freaked
Some
out.
people are claustrophobic.
Very much so. That's,
Yeah.
That's a similar experience though, right?
Important.
Yeah, very,
Totally. Very.
Just
Almost
checking.
identical.
Yeah.
I appreciate you putting yourself in my shoes to feel those things that I was feeling, all those heavy emotions.
Trying to validate.
Thank you. You're the best.
Therapy brain over there. She'll tell you whatever you want to hear. Just kidding. So I can imagine that though. Then did he ever come back or?
That person in particular, did not come back.
Interesting.
So he might not have been quite ready for it.
Yeah.
But that is not a frequent thing that happens.
Okay. So outside of being a dominatrix, what would you be?
I love things in the medical field. So I might want to
That
go
also
into-
could-
I know, there's a good crossover. I actually know a fair amount of people who have retired from professional domination and gone into nursing.
Oh,
We're really hard to gross out.
yeah, I bet.
You've probably seen a lot.
And also, probably also how to be more gentle and
I mean, you're really familiar with the
good
human
bedside manner.
body, typically.
Good torture rack side manner.
Some crossover,
Okay, the last one, because we already talked about the cleaning of the rooms, because that was my question.
Yes.
What is the typical age of your clientele?
It varies so much. Just Saturday, I saw one of my oldest clients, and he has to be in his early 70s.
Wow.
No, I'm sorry, early 80s.
I
Wow.
fucking
For real?
love him.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
Yep.
Oh man, I love him.
I know.
I want to be like that when I'm 80.
When I'm 80, you won't know if the diaper that I have on is from role playing or incontinence.
Probably a little bit of both, is my guess.
Whatever, don't judge. So obviously this movie and book series is seen as sort of the
I thought I made it through an entire interview
No, but
without
like-
it.
no, we hate it. I think it's the dumbest thing ever. So how much do you hate those movies? Come on. I'm guessing a lot.
I'm guessing a lot, yeah.
Here's what I have to say about 50 Shades of Grey. I like that it has people talking about BDSM
Fair.
and it has people exploring their fantasies, and it's given probably people who are fantasizing about this type of play a license to bring it up with their significant other and be less ashamed.
Make
Kind of
it straight.
normalizes it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it normalizes it, destigmatizes it to a certain extent. And also it's, these books got a lot of people off. I think that is
Yeah.
great. If it gets you off, fantastic. As long as it's not harming anyone else, fantasy is fantasy. Cool. I think it is a terrible way to learn how to do BDSM. And so I think it's detrimental in that respect. And also the character in there, the Mr. Gray character, perpetuates a lot of the really damaging myths about BDSM, that people are into this because they've been abused as kids and it's unhealthy. He's very stalker-esque in this, and a very controlling, I would say, manipulative or even abusive dominant. So terrible role model to have. There are some nice secondary effects of it, but not a big fan.
I think that's a pretty informed take. If I expected anybody to have an idea about it, it would be you.
Yeah. So I read probably the first 10 pages of the first book. That is the extent I could read.
Yeah.
And I saw the first 2
because you just got angry.
I'm a snob about a lot of things, and even
I value my time very, very highly, and I could not read it quickly enough to.
Yeah.
the takes that I saw, not even the subject matter, but the takes that I saw online, just about like the low quality of writing. And I'm such a snob about so many things, that being one of them. And I just could not. There's no way I would do it.
I think there was a moment in it where there was a pommel horse. Do you know what I'm talking about? Do you remember that scene? And I busted out laughing in the theater. I just started dying laughing. I was the only one. But by like the second movie, everyone was laughing in the theater. Like it was just so bad. It was so bad.
I think that's the preferred response to that.
He is. I mean, it's eye candy.
Yeah.
I mean,
he is great.
Same reason people like romance novels, fantasy.
Right. Kind of transporting yourself, that suspension of belief, getting to put yourself in a different position.
Yeah. And also one thing, wealth is a tremendous part of that. If he was a broke dude.
Totally.
Who was still hot, but treating her the same way.
Totally.
He'd never get away with it.
He would never. No. You're so right.
Absolute power corrupts absolutely. And that's the second time today I've said that.
Are you done now?
I am.
Okay, good. Well, I think that's all the questions I have. Do you have any other questions?
Nope, that's it from me.
Oh, you guys are wonderful.
You are wonderful.
Thank you so much for coming. This has been awesome. You were absolute delight, and I'm super excited to check out Chicago Dungeon Rental.
Yeah, like I wanna go. Everyone I've told about this is like, can we go? Can we go, Vit?
Well, you guys are welcome to come over and take a tour of the space.
Awesome.
People can always contact us, and if we have time in the schedule, we'll walk you through it so you can see what it is to decide if it's right for you.
Awesome.
But otherwise, visiting our website, chicagodungeonrentals.com, photos of all 3 spaces, and also a tremendous listing of all the equipment that's there. So if you're wondering, hey, do you have that, one paddle or whatever? We have pictures and descriptions of everything. So you know what to expect. A lot of try before you buy stuff, because kink equipment's expensive. You can try it at our place first.
Okay, so guys, we will have all of that information in the show notes. So you definitely are going to want to check out that website and do some research. I know I'm going to be doing that. Jenna's already probably done it.
I've already done it. It's fine.
Okay, guys, you know the drill. If you have a topic you want us to explore or have any questions you'd like to ask, you can write to us at menagepod3@gmail.com. Listen here. Or text us at 872-221-2083.
Well done.
Thanks for listening to us on Apple Podcasts and anywhere else you get your podcasts. And remember, guys, rate, review, subscribe. And if you don't, I'm going to the dungeon rental. I'm getting a paddle. And I'm coming after you. So write us reviews, 5 stars, please.
I might like that, though.
Anything else?
No, I'm done.
All right, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.